Good afternoon, guys. Welcome back. My name is Brandon, and today we've got a metal fabrication and welding project to do. Stick around. This is what we're working on today, guys. So this exhaust right here, it doesn't seem like it would be problematic, but I'll tell you what, this thing has probably ruined $300 worth of coats. It has destroyed a couple of LL Bean jackets. It's destroyed a Duluth long coat of my wife's. And what happens is that for whatever reason, we'll go to like reach over something or change the chute on a snowblower, and we'll end up just touching our jacket on the edge of this, and it completely just melts a hole through it almost instantly. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to fabricate some sort of guard that uses these existing mounting points right here and kind of like covers over the top to just shield it so that we no longer destroy our clothing when we use this. I'm going to be putting this away for the winter, so I've got to clean it up and we're going to service it. I got to grease it and do an oil change on it. Now, all of my stuff, guys, that I have, I try to take really good care of it. I try to repair it and keep it in good working order, and that includes just routine maintenance so that next year when I take this out, it'll be all ready to go. And you can see the tag. What I do is, because I can't remember everything I do, especially getting older, so I know that, you know, I'll put a little tag on it. It says fresh oil, February of 20. So that's the last time I changed the oil. So it'll just remind me next year when I go to get ready to take this, I'll know that I've taken care of it. It's done. But this carburetor has never been cleaned, so I think I'm also going to clean the carburetor in this episode too. I'm just going to start loosening up this. I don't expect this oil to look very bad at all, actually. Whereas it doesn't have a lot of use on it. Yeah, it probably doesn't even need to be changed. Now you can see that oil looks pretty clean, guys. Look at that. It's pretty tan. So, you know, I probably really don't have to change it. You can actually like see through the oil. It's so clean. But, you know, it's a lot cheaper to put oil in it than it is to, you know, put a motor in it. So there, got it all drained out. Throw the cap on it. Get some fresh oil on it. And we'll be back in business. There's some, you know, film in the bottom of this. This wasn't necessarily a clean bucket, but you can see it's, the oil's still pretty tan. Like I said, probably didn't need to be changed, but, you know, a thing of motor oil's pretty cheap, and yeah, I'm just running regular conventional. I change it so frequently it doesn't really matter. And just so I can remember, again, I just make little notes on all my stuff so I don't mess it up and I know what I need for oil. Just helps every year because I can't remember if it's 30 weight or what it is, so now I know just by looking at it. And I don't really know how much oil this takes, but I'm guessing probably maybe close to a quart. But we'll find out. Just about did it. Of course, I need just a little bit extra. It's hard to see, but it's right down at the bottom add level. So I'll have to go get a little bit more. And I'll go run to the store and grab another quart of it, just probably a few ounces, and top that off. But now I gotta go take this used oil and go dump this down the storm drain real quick. That was a joke, guys. Don't go dumping your used motor oil down a storm drain. If you take any like gallon buckets, like this right here is obviously a vinegar bucket. I use just 1 gallon jugs, and I take all my used motor oil and put them in them. A lot of times I'll buy my motor oil in a gallon jug instead of like by the quart, and I'll just save the empty jug and put used motor oil in it. Just put a little label on it. This obviously has brake fluid in it too, but a lot of recycling places will take this from you for free. You know, you fill these up, and yeah, don't go dumping them in drains or anything like that. Save the oil, because actually people use this. They'll come get it, and like I say, it's not a big deal. You can get rid of it for nothing. Now, the next thing I'm going to do, guys, I'm going to remove these couple guards right here, because this is what we're going to attach the shield to. And while I've removed the guards, that's going to expose the carburetor, and I'm going to clean the carburetor while I have it right here. Now this runs just fine, but what I'm finding that I'm having to do is run it not with the choke off, but with the choke on, just a couple clicks. And generally what that means is that the carburetor is dirty. And because this is a snowblower, this doesn't even have an air filter on it, because it's run in snowy conditions, so they figure it doesn't get dirty. The reason this carburetor does need to be cleaned is because it sits. It sits for, you know, half the year, or better than half the year. I run non-ethanol fuel in everything that is small equipment. Even my bikes, I run non-ethanol fuel. The only thing that I run ethanol fuel in are my like daily driver cars. And ethanol fuel, when it sits in a carburetor for any extended period of time, it just raises all kinds of problems. It causes all kinds of problems in them. So I don't think that that's the case with this. This snowblower is probably maybe 15 years old, I'm guessing, and the carburetor's probably never been off and it's probably never been cleaned. So it'll be interesting to see how it looks. So we'll find out here shortly. And there's the old girl right there. What is that? Oh, it's a little primer bulb. It broke off. Maybe that's why the carburetor's not running good. Look at that. And this is a perfect reason why you should do maintenance on your equipment. So I think this is a primer bulb. You press on this and it just kind of like forces fuel into the carburetor. But look at the end of this line. It used to be attached right here. You see how that line is completely broken off? So that's probably sucking in air, and this is supposed to be a closed system. So that's probably one of the reasons why it's not running the way it should. But you know, while we're right here, I'm going to take this off, this carburetor off. It's not a big deal. It looks like a couple screws on this guard here and here. And then, you know, a couple bolts here. And then we'll just pinch off this fuel line with a pair of hose clamps. And this should be good. We'll just inspect it and make sure it's clean. While we're right here, it only takes a second. But yeah, this is a good example of why you should maintain your stuff. Because this is an easy fix now, and I'll tell you what, it's a lot easier to do right now in a nice warm shop in a controlled condition than it is to do in a cold shadow garage in the middle of the winter when you're trying to figure out what's wrong with this stuff. A little trick you can do to keep fuel hoses so they don't trickle is just take a pair of, you know, these are just like needle nose vice grips, and just clamp it down on the hose, and that'll squeeze it off so it doesn't leak. And it shouldn't leak much. It'll probably leak a little, but come on. This is a plastic fitting, so hopefully I don't snap this off. There we go. There we go. Good. Couple little screws right here. I had the whole top end of this motor apart a couple years ago. I had a blown head gasket. It was making all sorts of racket noise. I guess that's a fairly common problem with these motors, but I haven't had a problem ever since. I put a new head gasket on it and put it all back together, and the thing has run flawless for a couple seasons, so I haven't had any problems. It always starts right up. I'll put a link to that video up above if you want to see how I did that. I just got to take out a couple screws here, and that's it. Hopefully the gasket isn't damaged. If it is, we'll just make a new one. And I have some gasket material and a gasket punch kit. We can just create a new gasket real easy. But I think this gasket will probably be fine. Oh yeah. Just using a, it's like a star bit to get this out. There we go. Oh yeah, piece of cake. Came right out, no problem. Yep, that gasket's not going to be an issue at all. And let's see. We got to rotate this around without destroying it. Let's see. Finagling these linkages sometimes can be a problem. There we go. It's off. All right, let's take a look at this. Alright, the next thing you're going to want to do, guys, is go into the kitchen and grab one of your wife's baking sheets. This works great for doing this stuff, but don't let her see you doing this, because if you ask her to borrow one of her baking sheets, she's going to say no, so you're going to have to sneak it out. But yeah, this works good. You clean carbs on it. It's got a nice tray. It collects all your stuff. You can line motorcycle gas tanks with it. Just make sure when you're done that you don't leave this laying out in your shop. If she may occasionally go out there, she's going to see it and she's going to be on to you. So yeah, don't tell her you're doing this. Just grab it and yeah, hope for the best. Hopefully she doesn't know that you have it. So I'm just going to clean it off with some carbon choke cleaner before we get too far into it. And I'll probably just brush it down with a bristle brush. This is just a nylon brush. And I probably should have gloves on when I do this. It's not the best for your skin. I'm just going to try to get the bulk of the junk off it, and then we'll clean it better here in a little bit. But I want to open it up. I'm just curious to see how dirty it really is. These carburetors are so small that the jets are tiny, so it doesn't take much to clog them. And I'll take this same solution and we'll dump this right down the same storm drain that we dumped the oil in. Alright, so let's see. Boy, I can't wait to see how dirty this is. I bet there's a lot of gunk in the bottom of this. Ah. Just don't want these gaskets to end up getting ruined, so I'm going to try to be careful. Wow! I'm impressed. Actually pretty clean, look. So, if I had to take a guess, guys, I would say that the reason the carburetor wasn't running good was because of that that hose had come off. That's my guess. Yeah, this thing doesn't look dirty at all inside. I thought there'd for sure be some crud in the bottom of the bowl, and if there's no crud in the bowl, the carburetor's probably pretty clean. Just going to flush out some of the passages with some carb cleaner and call it a day. Take off this little nub here. Yeah, so that was just sucking air, guys. That's why that wasn't running right. It was just pulling in air in this thing, so that's why I had to run it with a choke on. It was just getting too much air, so that was the problem there. And again, I should be wearing gloves, I know. But you want to wear glasses for sure. This gets in your eyes, you're not going to like it. Carb cleaner is real rough on seals around the float bowl, so you got to be careful there too. Alright, I think we're probably good. I'll blow some air through it. Like I say, it was running pretty good. I just had to have the choke on a little bit, but I'm guessing that's because of that open air leak. Yeah, we're just going to put this back together. I'm very confident that that was what the problem was. So that just goes to show, guys, how well that this ethanol, non-ethanol fuel works, because this snowblower sits for pretty much most of the year, and I don't do anything special. I don't drain the carburetor. I don't do anything. I do put some seafoam additive in it, and that's it. That's all I do. But I put that in when I fill up the 5-gallon jug before the winter. So yeah, I don't see any problems here. I think this is going to be just fine. Then installing it is just obviously the same thing, but in reverse. Just make sure you hook up the throttle linkage. There. Okay, that looks good. Slip the fuel line back on. It's going to pull off this damaged line, and I'll throw on a new one. This is some good stuff. This is the Tygon fuel line. It's like resistant to ethanol fuel. Not that I use it or anything, but it should be a little bit better. And stuff this back on here. Now it should probably run a little bit better now that it's not sucking a pile of air up. But come on, get on there. There we go. There. Alright, let's try that. Let's see, which way is the choke? So choke is going to be this way. So it should need a choke, I would think. So choke it that way, turn it clockwise to turn it off, turn on the fuel, turn on the on switch. Yep, I'm happy with that. Good. Let's lubricate whatever we can lubricate. Actually, let me check the plug. I think the spark plug's probably good, but I think I put a spark plug in this within the last couple of years, so it shouldn't be that bad, I wouldn't think. Oh yeah, nothing wrong with that. Check that out. Yep, plug's got a lot of life left in it. It's fairly new. Got a couple grease fittings on it, so I'm just going to grease these for the auger. There's that. That didn't take much. There's that. I'm going to give it a quick wipe down and we can start our welding project. So this is what I think I'm going to do. I'm going to take some 1.5 inch angle, okay, and then I'll end up using that because it's the right height because it already has the flange. That way I can use these two existing holes to mount it down, so then we'll put a hole there, and then the plate will go over the top, and then we can maybe put like a little leg that goes down over here and catches on this end. That should probably do it, I would think. So what I'll do is I'll kind of start off by, let's see, roughing this out, see how long I'm going to need it. Let's say probably something like this. We'll cut it like right about there. That'll be scrap. And then I'll cut it using my portable bandsaw stand that I made. And if you haven't seen this build, check it out. I'll put a link up above. But this is pretty slick. This one I built is for a Milwaukee portable bandsaw, but you could build this and adapt it however you wanted to. But the key feature to this is actually this little tab that I ended up putting in the table that actually hangs this by the vent, and then there's just a little clip underneath. So, but yeah, this is slick. If you have a Milwaukee bandsaw, this table right here is super slick for you. Now we don't want it just like that, because that would look kind of rough, right? With sharp edges and stuff. So what we want to do is we want to radius the corners. That way it just kind of gives it a little more of a finished look, you know. So one of the ways we can do that is to just take a little flat washer and then just trace the corner out. Might as well do it to all of them. Now you can take this down a couple ways. You could do a hand grinder, you know, just an angle grinder, or you could take it over to the pedestal grinder. And that's what we have here. And if you haven't seen how I built this, you should check this out. This is like over 150 pounds. This column is filled with sand, so there's very little vibration. This thing works incredible. Another thing you can do if you want to make it quicker at the grinder is just nip off these corners. Watch this. And that just gets it a lot closer, so you're grinding less. Yeah. So here's our little bracket that we made, and now the next thing we're going to do is I want to get the holes lined up so that we can put them through here. Now there's a bunch of ways you can do it, and I think what I'm going to do is just take this like caliper and just stick it down in the holes, and there we go. Call that good, you know, and then just transfer that onto our piece. And now I can just center it up on this. just kind of, you know, eyeballing everything, just kind of setting it there, saying that looks good. Make a little scratch mark there, and then line that up. Make another little scratch mark over here. Now what I can do is I'll just take a speed square and line it up to that little scratch mark we just made, and I'll just scratch it all the way across. You see that? And I'll do the same thing over here. There, and there's that. Now we got them both. So now we just got to determine how far onto that we want it. And again, we're keeping things really simple. It looks like if I, you know, called this the center of this bracket, that I would be doing just fine. So it looks like here's the hole. If I put the hole in the center of the bracket, you know, back here, there wouldn't be any clearance issues or anything like that. So I think that that's what we'll do. We'll just call it center of that. So what I'll do is I'll just come in 3/4 of an inch off the edge and use a center punch, 1/2, 3/4 right there, and put a center punch mark, and then we'll do the same thing. Line it up, come in 3/4, center punch. Now we just got to drill it. Now some of you guys might be new to my channel that are watching, and you haven't seen this build. Well, what this is, this used to be a drill press right here. The whole top of the drill press motor and all that was junk. The bearings were shot in it. It had a bunch of things wrong with it. But I picked it up cheap off Marketplace. Comes with a stand that it's sitting on right now, a big metal base. So I converted it over to hold my mag drill, and this thing works awesome. This is probably one of my favorite tools. I got this for super cheap, and yeah, it's worth every penny, I'll tell you that. Alright, I've already messed up a little bit, guys. I ended up having to put a different set of holes in, but closer to this section, not in the middle. These are in the middle. This set of holes is closer to this way because it was actually hitting the muffler right here. I didn't think there were going to be clearance issues, but they were. So, and I guess that's not a big deal as far as I'm concerned. These 2 holes that I misdrilled, that's fine by me. I'm okay with that. Not a problem. So I think that'll work good for there, guys. Now I think what I'll do is I'm just going to kind of hold this up, see what looks good. Looks like this, probably something along these lines here. Then I may end up putting even something right here, because I can see there's some black marks too on this, so maybe we're hitting our coat on that too. I don't really know, but maybe I'll come out and kind of come down with like a little cover here. Now I'll just transfer my my rough measurement. Actually, let me switch it around. Kind of do a rough measurement. What do we'll call it 4.5, and we'll make a mark over here at about 4.5. And then what I'll do, I will just make a nice clean fresh line here, and then we'll just cut it with our portable bandsaw. And we'll do the same thing. We'll radius the corners here. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is just try to set a couple little small nuts right here. There's like spacers. So when I set this on here, that's kind of got an even gap all the way across. Does that make sense? So when I go to weld this, it'll kind of hold itself there and look good. Then I think we're going to put a little cap right here, you know what I mean? Now I think I'll do something like this for that little cover, and we'll snap that off there. That'll be scrap. And then we got our little roof, and beveled it a little bit. You probably saw me doing that, and that's going to go kind of like that. And if we need a little bit of extra support on this end, which I don't think we will, there's actually a little clamp underneath here. We could always run a little piece of metal off that, put a little tab off it. But I don't think we're going to need it. I really don't. So to make sure that this fits good, what I'm going to end up having to do is put a tack and a tack on this bracket that's bolted down, and then I'll put a little tack here. I'm not overly excited about welding around a gas tank, but we'll be really careful, and I've got some welder's blankets that I can put over this too so it doesn't burn into this plastic. And for this, I'm using my Fronius Transsteel 2200, and this does pretty much everything that I need it to do. As you can see, it does MIG, it does stick, it does TIG. This thing is the answer. I love this machine, and it is buttery smooth. So, as always, when you open your argon, you open it real careful and real slow, and you stand off to the side so that if the thing explodes on you, it's not going to explode in your face. And you turn it on all the way. And the great thing about this, it'll run on 110, 220. It'll run on pretty much any voltage you've got, and it comes with a bunch of different adapters. Right now, I got it plugged into 220. And turn it on. Now it'll kind of do a little procedure of itself. Now to post flow the gas so that you know that you got the gas set right, all you do is just press this button. And you can see how that brought that up. So I'm running 20 CFH on this. Hit it again, turns off the gas, and if you forgot, I think it like turns off within 30 seconds. So we toggle through what we're doing. So I'm using steel, bare wire, you know, but you could use stainless, all different, self-shielded, you name it. You can just toggle down through. It says no PRG. So there's programs you can get pre-set up for whatever the material you're working for. This is all programmable. You can see I'm using 30 thousandths wire. You know, you just toggle it to the size that you're using. And other than that, then you set your gas. So straight argon or CO2 straight, argon and 2.5% CO2, or argon and 15 or 25% CO2. So C25. Another thing you can do with this, guys, if you know your material thickness, you can just set it by the thickness, and it's either in thousandths or millimeters. You have to set it up when you're doing the setup of the machine. I have this set up in thousandths. You could do it by amperage. So if you know what it is you want for amperage, you can set it that way. Or if you know your travel speed, you can set it up that way. It's whatever you choose. So pretty slick. So you do have to switch it over to manual mode. Right now it's in synergic, so it does it all on its own. Now we got our machine all set up, so now we're going to get everything tacked in place. There we go. Good. Now, a lot of you ask me, what are these gloves I'm wearing? These aren't MIG welding gloves, guys. These are just cheap gloves that I get at Home Depot, and I use these for tacking and setup. Other than that, when I go to weld, when I weld with MIG, I wear actual stick welding gloves. They're thick gloves, but for these, I got good dexterity. I just use a cheap glove. Yes, I go through them. They're polyester. They burn. They burn through. If you get them too hot, they burn into your skin. But yeah, these are just a cheap glove that I use, and I really like them for doing setup. Stuff like this. Okay, so we got that tacked on. That's nice and solid. Now we're going to weld on our little roof. The roof is on fire. There, how's that look? Pretty slick, huh? I don't know, guys. I'm thinking just debating whether to weld it up right in place. I think I will. There, now what I'll do is I'll take it off, guys, and I will clean this up, make it look seamless, like it was a cast punched part, and then I'll weld the backside. There, I got it all ground down now. Look how much better that looks. That looks like it was just a piece of bent metal now. It looks factory, nice and smooth. Rounded that edge over. So it just looks kind of like this was like a punched manufactured piece now. Now what I'll do for strength, it's almost full penetration on the back side. Almost went through. Now we'll weld the back side, and we'll weld right here. Then we'll paint it up and call it good. Let's get this all wiped down and painted so that we can, while this is drying, we can work on our next fabrication project. This is that Krylon paint that I said that I wasn't overly happy with, and a bunch of you said that I must have got a bad can, but it just comes out horrible. I must have. I've even tried a different nozzle on it, and it still comes out bad. While I'm waiting for that to dry, I'm going to add an additional piece of cutting edge onto this. That's the part that like scrapes into the ground when you're snow blowing. So I've removed the cutting edge right here, which is reversible. But look at, I don't know if you can see it looking down it. You see how it's kind of like, it's worn kind of like curved. And then I can flip it around and use this side and reuse it. But rather than do that, I'm going to try to make it a little bit heavier duty. And I think I'm going to weld a piece of material on to the edge of this and go all the way across with a lot heavier piece, so that way it wears a lot better. And I ended up having to do something very similar to these little like skid pads down here. They had worn right through, and I beefed them up a little bit. That was a couple years ago. Let me see what I got for material, and we'll see what we can come up with for a plan. Oh yeah, this is gonna work good, guys. Check this out. So this cutting blade is actually 1/8 of an inch that's here right now. And this piece I'm gonna add to it is 1/4 inch. So yeah, twice the thickness, so it should wear twice as long. Look at the look down it. You can see how opened up that edge is. So yeah, we're just gonna end up welding it kind of like that, right on top of it, all along it. You know, we're not gonna weld it solid, but we'll stitch it along the way, and that'll work perfect. So let me just flush it up over here on that end. And we will put a little mark over here where we got to cut it. There. Good. Then we'll bring it to the bandsaw and cut it off. One of the things I got to do is I got to clean up the paint that's on this. So I think what I'm going to do is run this straight edge kind of like in line with this slot with the oval. So I'm just going to put a line using my metal marker. That way I know that I got to clean along this edge right here and get that paint worked back. So when you're grinding, guys, make sure you got yourself some ear protection, eye protection, a respirator, and some good gloves, okay? Now I want this to sit flat, guys. You can see how it's got some rocking to it right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my table clamps that we made. And if you haven't seen this build, be sure to check it out. This was a a nice, easy DIY build that we did for this fabrication table. I'll tell you what, I have got a ton of use out of it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to tack along that, put a little tack here and there, and we'll do the same thing on the back, and then we'll call it good. Now that I got it all welded out, you can see how I just stitched it along it. Just a, 1.5 inch, 2 inch long stitch weld. I did it on both sides. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through and just use the angle grinder with a wire wheel, clean it up real quick, and then just put a coat of paint on it just to help so it makes it last a little bit longer. Then we'll get it all bolted up onto the snowblower, and we'll get it all adjusted, and then it'll be ready for next winter. Then it's just the same process as always. We're just wiping everything down with mineral spirit. So now I'm just going to spray this out real quick. While this is drying, we'll go put the piece that we just fabricated onto the snowblower. Alright, so let's see how we did. I think that's going to work out just fine. There. That'll work perfect. That's going to work great, guys. Hopefully no more burned jackets. Now, I found some carriage bolts that I already have, because the reason that it needs to be a carriage bolt is you can see how that's like square there, so that fits down through that. And then I ended up reusing the nuts that were on the other carriage bolts. And if you remember right, we broke one, and I ended up having a actual one of those same type of nuts. It's looks like yellow zinc, so they all look the same. So everything will be pretty much the same. These are a little long, these bolts. So I think what we'll do is we'll assemble it all, and then I may end up having to cut the bolt off the length if it bothers anything. But yeah, let's get that new cutting edge bolted on and see how it's going to work. Yeah, that's going to work nice, guys. And I don't even have to adjust that. So the way this is right now, this is all the way back. So if we ever had to move it out to extend the cutting edge, we could. We got plenty left. And that would involve moving these down. But as you can see, if I run a straight edge across, that cutting edge is right in line. It just, sometimes you get lucky. It just worked out. So. But yeah, we got to cut off these bolts. They're a little too long, and for that, I'm just going to use a diamond cutoff wheel on my angle grinder, and this is who makes these blades that I use. And I know I've talked to you about them before, but I really like how this has a continuous rim versus like this style blade. This style blade right here tends to get jumpy a little bit sometimes because of these segments that are open, whereas this it runs a lot smoother in my opinion. So, and these are directional. This style disc with the segments in it, this is a known name brand disc, and these are not directional. You can put these on any way you want. So you can see what I've had to do for this is actually like right on it underneath the wheel, the nut, like under here, so I know which way it goes on. And I have to keep making sure that I put it on those marks right so I don't lose which way it's supposed to go. So these ones don't matter. Put it on any way you want, and it will cut just as it should. And that's all there is to it, guys. I want to thank you for watching. Thank you guys for tuning in. If this is something that you like, please don't forget to rate, comment, and subscribe. New videos every Friday. If you're wondering what I'm working on before it makes it up to YouTube, you guys can catch me on Facebook and on Instagram. I'll have links down below. Until next Friday, guys, I will see you then. Take care, stay safe, see ya.